Hi, my name is ecology from Drawing to Health, and welcome back to the course. In the last video, we talked about what environmental literacy is. I talked about the four components of it, and I explained why one would need such a thing. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the laws of ecology. And, they're not actually laws, they're just informal laws, like the laws of nature, just something which we use to describe the ecological processes. So it was developed by a guy named Barry Commoner, and basically he used that to describe the flaws that people forget about the world we live in. The flaws in the inner workings of it. So the four laws that we have are these. Everything is connected to everything else. Everything must go somewhere. Nature knows best, and there's no such thing as free lunch. Now I'm going to elaborate on these. Again, every slide has it has some information about each law. Feel free to pause the video to write it down on your own notes or read it again if you're not sure about something. Because again, it's a lot of information to take in, and yeah, so feel free to pause. Right. So let me get started. Um, First law, everything is connected to everything else. So humans and other species are interconnected. That means that we as humans are not just, our species on our own. We live with a lot of species. Think about the birds in your garden, or the worms that live in the dirt in your garden, or maybe you have a dog or a cat. There might be spiders in your house. Those are also, another species. Um, uh, People who live on the beach live off of fish, and you know that's also part of nature. There's just humans are interconnected with a lot of other species more than we realize that we are. We're a part of nature. We just kind of forget sometimes that we are. Another thing about that is things that are connected are dependent on each other, and that's very true. I can give you a small example. So I'm from the Netherlands, right? And here in the Netherlands, we have a special type of fatty fish that we like. It's called haring, and we eat it like this, right? A lot of people find it very yummy. However, I think it was either last year or the year before that, the fish population had a dramatic drop, and therefore we couldn't eat as much fish. The prices went up. There was a shortage of the fish, and a lot of people just couldn't eat it because, I think the price went from 3 to 5 or something. It was big. I'm not quite 100% sure because I myself don't eat that fish, but that's a very good example of, we're connected to the ocean. The Netherlands is very close. I mean, we're basically a coastal country. Half of our country is the coast. Um, so, we have a connection to the sea and to fish. We like fish. It's just the thing that we like. Um, but being connected to the sea also means that if the sea has a problem, we have a problem. So we're very connected into that. Um, so everything that we do impacts the environment, and that also impacts other living things. As I said, um, I think it was the reason the fish population went down in our case. I think it was something about we fished too much. So what we did impacted that part of the fish population, and therefore there were less fish the next year. So we weren't allowed to fish that much. And that also meant that other living things, which are perhaps dependent on that specific type of fish, also had problems. It's more of a everything's interconnected. It's like a web, or perhaps a set of dominoes. One topples and the rest follows. Um, no, wait, a butterfly effect is actually the better descriptor. Just one tiny thing somewhere can affect something somewhere else because everything's connected. So that's the first law of ecology. Everything is connected to everything else. The second is everything must go somewhere. There is no throwing away. That doesn't exist. Um, a good thing that I found is it looks no, it doesn't look. It's very much like one of the basic laws of thermodynamics. You might or may not heard of this, but it's a good thing to know. In nature, there is no such thing as final waste. Matter and energy are preserved. The waste is produced in one ecological, no, sorry, the waste produced in one of those ecological processes is recycled into another. So I have an example of burning wood. If you burn wood, it doesn't disappear. It turns into charcoal and then into smoke and ash. Um, some minerals might evaporate and go into the air. Others might turn into ash. Um, so that the matter and the energy that was in that tree is just in a different form. Another good example is, for example, a tree in the forest. If a tree dies and falls over in the forest, it becomes a host for so much other uh, species and plants. You might see a lot of mushrooms, a lot of bugs get in the soft wood of the tree. Birds may even nest in some of those. A badger might dig a hole underneath. You know, it becomes its own ecological process in the process of actually dying. You know, there's no waste. It just does not exist in ecology. It always goes somewhere. The grass that the cows eat, for example, they turn it into manure, but that manure actually um, feeds the grass again. So it becomes a cycle of um, waste and resource, waste and resource. You know, it never just leaves the ecosystem. It's always there, just in a different form. So you know, everything must go somewhere. Even things that you might think that they can't go somewhere, they do. They do. Just not perhaps not in the manner that you expect it, but they do. So that's the second law of ecology. Third law, nature knows best. Um, so hurricanes and floods play an important role in the environment, and you might think, but why? How? You know, that's bad. Those are bad things. Not exactly. At least not as far as nature is concerned. For us, it's a disaster, of course, and you know, for a lot of animals too, because a flood is not fun for something that lives beneath the ground. Obviously, it's not always a good thing. However, however, a hurricane might cause seeds from a specific kind of tree or plant to get blown all the way over there, and then it lands and grows new things in a completely new environment. It plays a role in the survival of perhaps of that species. You don't know. But it's a good thing for the tree and for the environment. Sometimes a hurricane will cross a place that is very heavily forested, and a lot of trees get either you know pushed down or you know torn out of the ground and whatnot. And it might seem like destruction, but that destruction always ends up, as said in the last law, it's not a waste because it gets used eventually by other forms of life. And the same thing with floods. Floods might seem unnecessary and not good, but the sediment in that river is rich in a lot of minerals that plants actually might need. So a flood might actually get all that sediment to go into a different part of the land and therefore um, nourish a spot that might not have had that nourishment in the first place, and therefore, you know, it replenishes itself. So for us, it might not be a good thing, but for nature, it's a very good thing. Um, so swamps and wetlands, for example, also they're a big part of nature. They help cleanse the water and regulate flooding. You might see cleanse the water. You know, wetlands are smelly and gross, you know, mud and everything. But the thing is that the plants that live in these swamps and wetlands take a lot of the toxins and bad stuff out of the water. And since water is naturally drawn to those places, flooding occurs much less regularly if you have like some sort of wetland in the neighborhood. I think that there's actually one between my city and the next city. they have made a wetland because the next city is a bit higher than we are, so all the water floods our way. So if we have a lot of rain here, the water level underneath in the ground gets high enough that actually some people might have problems in their basements that the water just comes up. So what they did is they put a special kind of wetland in there. You know, they just made a wetland and just let it go, and it works. It works fantastically. It helps catch the overflow of water that comes from the other city. So it works perfectly. I know that works. um, so another thing that nature does is natural fires. You might have heard about, the Australian fires and the Amazonian fires. They're bad, of course. It's not fun, and a lot of animals die. However, as you can see here, they burn grasses and trees, and as said, that matter doesn't just get destroyed, it goes back into that ecosystem. So nutrients from those trees and grasses are put back into the ground, and then new plants can grow. Because having the same plant be there for ages might seem like a good thing, but it's a circle of life, I suppose. Having new things over and over, um, it's a good thing. Nothing lives forever, and it's not supposed to. So, as much as we don't like that part of the ecosystem, it's a necessary part. It's something that is supposed to happen. Nature really does know best. It has its own solutions to a lot of problems, and we don't always need to interfere. So, that's the third law. Now, the last law. There is no such thing as free lunch. And with that, it's meant that everything we eat, wear, drive, view, whatever, has an environmental cost as well as monetary value. So this sweater, for example, is made of cotton. That cotton comes from nature. It's been planted and harvested. So this cost the earth something. Of course, it cost me something as well. I had to pay for it. Um, but it has an environmental cost. Now, this one is ecologically sourced, though. It's done with at least the least amount of pressure on the environment, but it does have some pressure. Even if it's very low, it does have some pressure. And we are not yet at the level that we can just produce things without it costing something. Not yet, but we can. I do really believe that we're getting to that point. And, you know, even for example, the coffee that I'm drinking also comes from a plant, and that plant has had to get energy from the ground to grow, and then I drink it. So that's also an environmental cost. Um, yeah, so nothing's for free. Um, and I mean, it says free lunch, but it applies to basically everything. The the bricks that built this house are also from nature. They were harvested somewhere else. Everything has a cost. So that's a very good thing to remember. Now, you yourself can play a big part in saying, how big do I want that cost to be? There's a lot of companies that will keep that cost as low as possible. And there's also some companies that just do not care, and they, take whatever they want. So that's also a good thing to keep in mind. So those four laws of ecology are important, especially if you want to be environmentally literate. It's good to keep these in mind, but they're not like the end all of all laws and you have to, obey them. Absolutely not. But they're good guidelines as to how you want to help the environment. So that's that. Um, Yeah, so that's pretty much it because that's all I have for this video at least, which was just explaining the laws of ecology. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how you can use your what you've just learned and your own ideas for at home or at work, and what you can do to, help the environment a little bit. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.